What we're going to talk about today is formulas and relationships. A formula is a special kind of an equation. A formula, sometimes we call it a rule. A formula or a rule tells us how two or more different pronumerals relate to each other. Now you've already done this, you probably just haven't thought about it this way. Let's say, for example, we were looking at a rectangle. We said this was the length and this was the breadth, and we wanted to know the area. If we wanted to know what the area of that rectangle is, we would say that the area is the length times the breadth. Area equals length times the breadth. So when we deal with this, it's just a formula or a rule for finding area. So what we're talking about is formulas or rules. Whenever we have a formula or a rule, we typically have a subject. And the subject of the formula or rule is the pronumeral that sits by itself on one side, usually the left side of the equation. That's called the subject. And in order to use a formula, what we do is we do two things. Number one, we substitute everything that we know, and then we solve. Sometimes the solving isn't really difficult to do, sometimes it's a little more challenging. So let's use a different rule. If we wanted to know the perimeter of this rectangle, we would say that the perimeter is equal to 2 times the breadth plus 2 times the length. Or you could say 2 times the length plus 2 times the breadth, whatever you prefer. Okay? Now let's say that we had a problem and I told you that the length is equal to 4 and the breadth is equal to 7. Well, if we want to use our formula or our rule, what we do is first off we write our rule down. Perimeter equals 2 times the breadth plus 2 times the length, and then we substitute in what we know. So we have perimeter is equal to 2 times the breadth, which is 7, 2 times 7, plus 2 times the length, which is 4. 2 times 7 is 14, plus 2 times 4 rather is 8, and that tells us that the perimeter is going to be 22. Now that was a fairly easy one because the subject was the thing we didn't know, but sometimes the subject is some of the information we're provided. So let's say that instead of this problem I told you that the perimeter is equal to 40 and that the breadth is equal to 3. We're going to do this problem exactly the same way as we did this one. We're going to start with the formula. We're going to write our rule or our formula down, 2b plus 2l. We know that our perimeter is 40. We know that our breadth is 2, so that's 2 times 3, plus, we don't know the length, so that means that we're going to have to solve this problem. And we're going to start with simplifying. 40 equals 2 times 3 is 6, plus 2l. We're going to subtract 6 from both sides, which means that we have 34 equals 2l. And then we're going to divide both sides by 2. And that tells us that 17 equals l. Okay, we've just solved that. And we could put that all back in to our formula and say 2 times the length, that's 2 times 17 is 34, plus 2 times the breadth, that's 6, equals 40. That should be what I have, and it is. And that is formulas and relationships.